joining. It looks like what we have on the agenda is the project at 90 and 92 Highland Avenue, which used to be the Ossining Children's Center, which is now relocated. I don't know if anyone had a chance to look over the documents. It looks like they're from the two buildings, they're creating 10 units, one of which is going to be affordable housing, and they're going to reduce the impervious surface, which I think is nice. They did mention in the narrative that they wanted to add a parking space in the front of the building. That would be like an accessible parking space. And
it's actually already an existing space, but they're moving it a little bit and making it conforming.
I see. Okay. I couldn't really see that on the plan.
Let me pull up the plan.
So, yeah, when I look at the plan, I couldn't really see that, you know, that was the case. I couldn't really see where that parking space would be.
It is there. It's a little hard to see underneath. I'm going to show you as best I can. I'm try to zoom in here. If I can show them. So if you can see that little light gray lining there, that's where the existing space is. Behind that lining, that little light gray area is currently, like, you know, plantings and things of that nature. So they're talking about moving the space in order to make it a conforming unit, a conforming handicap space. They would be doing that there. So I'm gonna actually bring in the applicant in so that they can speak. I'm gonna make them attendees, or panelists, I should say. And I wanted to mention that during the planning board meeting, the applicant actually brought up the fact that they thought this might be a, you know, an unlisted action, or you know, and so for that reason may need to go through seeker. It was actually the after a conversation with land use council and myself, you know, we're of the opinion that it would most likely be deemed a type 2, but that determination needs to be made by the planning board. If it was deemed a type 2, then the EAC really doesn't have jurisdiction. But just out of an abundance of caution, we did want to send it to the EAC to take a look at it. So you know, certainly I would, you know, give your recommendations with the understanding that you know, it under normal circumstances probably wouldn't have been referred to you. I think you still have the opportunity to provide some good guidance, and your opinion will certainly be, you know, considered as a part of the conditional use permit for the planning board. So it's helpful, but I wanted to just, you know, advise you of that caveat. With that, we have the applicant here. So
Steve Jones is the applicant. I'm the architect. Did you want to say anything more, Jaime, or
no? It's actually Erica is the chair of the board, so I'll let her, you know, handle.
Okay.
There.
We'll let you move forward. We've all had a preliminary look at your plan, and yeah, we'll let you lead with the discussion. Thank you.
So I'm Stephen Jones, leading the project. Greg DeAngelis, I'd like to introduce next as our architect. Thank you for your service and for speaking with us tonight. I'll be glad to talk with you and answer questions that you have. And really, before turning it over to Greg, I'd just like to say we're very excited about the project, returning these properties that were originally built as residences, in my understanding, to the tax rolls, and also thereby closing and benefiting the Ossining Children's Center in its new headquarters by purchasing the properties. I'd also note that we redeveloped the adjacent building immediately to the south some 5 years ago or so at 94 South Highland, corner of Everett and South Highland, very successfully. And we have the same team, same architect, same everybody really so far on this project, including Greg, who did the last project and designed it. So with that, I again, thank you. Turn it over to Greg DeAngelis.
Thank you, Steve. And I mean, maybe the easiest is to just look at the site plan, kind of give the overview, unless you want me to take over the screen.
I would actually prefer if you did take over the screen this time. I've set it up so you can enable it. My dual screen setup, my son has sabotaged me and stolen the HDMI cord. So
okay,
it'd be helpful if you could manage it this time.
Yep. So let me do that. Share screen. And this is the one we want. Okay, and let me just bear with me a minute. Enlarge this. So again, it sounds, I overheard, sounds like a couple of you are familiar with the project location. This is South Highland here, the aerial view. And Everett is going at the bottom of the page. This is 94 South Highland, which Steve was just mentioning. We helped him renovate that a few years back now. And then the two buildings out were the Ossining Children's Center. Number 92 is the smaller of the two buildings, and number 90 is the larger. There's a shared driveway with some parking spaces back on for 90. And there's this whole area, which we'll talk about a little more, which is been covered with rubberized asphalt surfacing, basically impervious surface. And then between 90 and 92 is another driveway, which goes through, it's the main parking area, and then it exits onto Everett. So it makes a good, logical traffic flow. The proposal is to merge both lots together. And then together in 90, there'll be 7 units, and in 92, there'll be 3. There's also some of this rubberized asphalt surface on the south side of 92, which we're proposing to remove that and just create lawn area. So we are, even though the property, so we are decreasing the amount of impervious surface, a good bit. You can kind of see here, and let me maybe move up the photo from the street view. So, oops, sorry about that. Stop. So this is 90 South Highland, the larger one. This is the shared driveway that goes back to the rear. And this is the parking space that is the existing space now. And it's kind of a turnaround. The problem is, and there is a ramp here that goes to the front door, the prior main door, but it needs to be regraded. It doesn't quite meet ADA requirements for slopes and cross slopes. So our proposal is to move the parking space over, actually closer to the building, further away from the street, and then rebuild the ramp around it. And that I'll show that on the site plan. And it's basically renovating these two buildings. And let me just, I think, go up to see if I can get up to the site plan here. And actually, we've added, I should find the more current one. We did submit one earlier today to Jaime to address a couple of the questions that had come up at the planning board. And that may take me a minute to find. Thought I had it ready. Here we go. Application, and this is the revised. Where'd we go? Well, let me come back to that just to give you some momentum. So this is the driveway between 90 and 80. And this is this whole zone area, which is really pretty much completely covered in this rubberized asphalt. So we're proposing to clean this up and remove it and put in basically grass lawn. There's a couple walkways that were used for the children going back and forth between the buildings, which we don't need as extensively for the new use. So we're going to remove some of those concrete walkways. Here's the area where we are, working on where the parking is, the front yard parking for the handicap space, which leads directly into the building. And then this area over to the left of, or south side of 92 is also a big area of rubberized asphalt, which had playground equipment in it, which we can remove and just put in grass surfacing. Newer plan, we're showing a bike rack back here. I'll pull that up in a minute just to confirm it, but seems like a good spot. Most of the people will be in this building. There's 7 units in this one, 3 over here. So it seemed like a good location for it. That's basically the overview. We're excited that we're able to get rid of a lot of this impervious surface and create some nice lawn grass areas. The units, we have a mix of units in there in the property, in the project. A studio, 5 1-bedrooms, 2 2-bedrooms, and 2 3-bedroom units. So it can accommodate some young families, and the grass lawn would be able to be used by the occupants. I think those are the highlights. I'm happy to answer any questions. Maybe take a break and let someone ask any question you might have.
So with the grass spaces, would you be open to including some landscaping features, maybe a couple of small flower beds and some trees to kind of encourage some native growth in the area, as well as providing, some variety for birds and bees, rather than just have this kind of high water use or water needs grass lawn?
I think the answer would be yes. We are on a tight budget because these are not high rent properties. So,
Right.
and Steve is really, so we want to be smart about it. Certainly understand the initiative.
Right.
Right. I think it will end up being.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I saw on the plan that there's only 1 unit that's proposed to be a low income. And so the remainder will be market rate, right?
Correct.
So a 3-bedroom apartment, 2 3-bedroom apartments. Can you repeat the breakdown one more time, please?
Yes, I can. There's one studio apartment, and then there's 5 1-bedrooms, 2 2-bedrooms, and 2 3-bedrooms.
And Greg, I think the question went to low income versus ADA accessible. Did you catch the question?
Was that the question, or was it just about the number of affordable, fair and affordable?
No, I mean, you mentioned that there was a, limitation because they weren't going to be high income rentals, but there is in fact only one of the 10 units that's got a limit on the rental value. So it's hard to say at this point, really, isn't it, that they're going to be low income rentals. I mean, a couple of trees in the backyard,
Right.
In terms of carbon sequestration, in terms of the fact that the village of Ossining is one of the most densely urbanized municipalities in all of Westchester County, I think it would go a long way for us as the EAC to have something that's capturing, taking more of the rainwater flow than a lawn, and also in terms of carbon sequestration for the village's green goals. I think that would also, be nice for us to see in a plan like this moving forward.
Well, if I could note, I think just on behalf of the board, one of the recommendations the EAC made some time ago and is generally adhered to by the planning board is that when putting in new plants, that wherever possible, using native plants. And there are also some, I think, with the removal of some of the, especially on the sort of southeast corner, there is some extra rainfall that I know is of issue. So the creation of like a rain garden that doesn't require long-term maintenance out of native plants would be essentially somewhere where some of the rain could just go. I would advise the applicant to consider this, where possible, but I don't think that the expectation is that we're looking at expensive stuff. Rather, the money saved on the maintenance costs of grass might be spent on the addition of some, native plants that would normally go in a rain garden that might fit somewhere on the property.
Yeah, I mean, we're not talking like English garden, but just, some ornamentation to kind of break up the grass a little bit and provide more environmental benefit for the area that it's going to be in. We, recognize that you're taking away a lot of impervious surface and a lot, basically returning nature to nature. So we understand that, but, we want to make sure that it's done in a way that provides the most benefit for the community around it.
Right. And I appreciate the comments and keeping an open mind. In the first instance, my understanding is that we're going to be driven by issues like opening up, creating more pervious and reducing the impervious surfaces that will in turn create the opportunity to figure out what to put where. We are dealing with addressing with municipal officials. I expect to be continuing to discuss issues like Mr. Martinez mentioned about drainage at the 92 site. That behind that site is virtually all asphalt back there. That's the most substantial parking. Whereas some of the impervious surface is being removed to the south of 92. There's a possibility of doing plantings there. And particularly because there's a slope there, what we want to do is balance the helping improve the drainage, the beauty and sustainability of the site with creating, most likely there's space behind 90, particularly way toward the back, where there is space for, which is flat. The grade does change, but there's flat space where we're able to have basically area for the tenants. Nobody else can access these areas for obvious reasons, given the configuration of the lots. It's private property and will be available only for the tenants. And so we want to balance the requirements of law for parking with the drainage issues and creating some space for the tenants to enjoy, all of which has already been discussed, especially in terms of some of the highlights I just gave you with the planning board, and then the ZBA is coming up shortly. Similar discussions, I'm sure. So I'm very open-minded about it. As to the only other point I heard was on the issue of trees. There are some trees on site now. They're not large. They probably were never planted. They probably just grew up. But I am mindful of a desirability. The way that you can see, we can't get trees into the south of behind 90 to the west of 92. Excuse me. There may be some ability to do that back behind, but we're also right on property lines and we're dealing with parking as well. And we have neighbors who undoubtedly have their own views about what we put right. Anything we plant that's of height is going to affect other neighbors. So we're also mindful of that. And I hope that does let you know that we have been thinking about these issues that you have raised.
I have a question. Why is this property not considered west of Route 9? Because from what I
It's-
see, it is, and that might help with, if we had a SWIP, that might help with some of the drainage issues, or at least
Yeah, so
dealing
it
with
is,
some of
so let me try to explain something. It is west of Route 9. So the way that the LWRP role assigns the EAC review of this is that if it's a type 2, which is basically, rehabs, projects that are sort of normal throughout the general course that are not having a major impact, that are not intended to disturb a massive amount of land, that they don't require review. Only unlisted actions and type 1 actions. Type 1 actions being really big projects, and unlisted being sort of everything in between, the ones that haven't been identified as definitely have an impact but needing further review. So
Okay.
in this instance, one of the things that the EAC did request earlier was that anytime any action went to a seeker process, even if it was east of the EAC, east of Route 9, that it would be sent to the EAC to at least take a look at it. In this instance, you do have the opportunity to provide comments. You have the opportunity to write a letter. And similar to what you would have in any other circumstances, I do expect fully that the planning board is going to take into consideration your recommendations.
Yes. Okay.
So
Okay, no, that's good to
SWIP
clarify.
the SWIP would only, I think that the SWIP so far, it has been determined it doesn't need a SWIP because they're not really disturbing the land, because they're not building anything new. They're just
Okay.
removing the rubberized surface, which is
All right.
not quite meeting the level.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. That's good to know. My other question is in regards to the garbage, and what you're doing about the garbage location. I used to rent from the property that is adjacent to the driveway that leads out onto Everett Avenue. And when they have to do garbage pickup, they back up into the driveway and they bring it out. It's a very tight fit. And I was wondering if there is a different location, because I know you were talking about changing some of the configuration between the two buildings. Is there a way to have maybe, I don't know, a better location that's not as tight fitting? I'm thinking about days like today, like where we had snow, we have a significant amount of snow accumulation. That intersection between the two driveways has always been a problem, going in and out with cars. So I was just wondering if anything in regards to garbage and how garbage is going to be stored in that particular corner, if it needs to stay there, if there's a location that would be a better fit for it to go, and if you need to put in more garbage bins to accommodate the fact that this is now going to be residential rather than a children's center.
Let me try to answer some of that, and then Steve, you can add if you want as well. I in many ways, it still seems like the most logical or best location, because
Okay.
we were not proposing and didn't see any value in trying to change the one-way circulation.
Okay.
We've heard from another neighbor that there were some challenges with the refuse trucks and coming in and out at times, but we really didn't see any other good spot to put it that wouldn't make them here, at least when they back in, they back straight back to it.
Yeah, it's a very tricky spot. And I know, like, it's there have been times where they've accidentally clipped the fence, and like it's and then it just becomes a tight fit between the two driveways, because they are really right next, like right up against each other.
Yeah, it's 12 feet wide, so there's not a lot of extra room there. Yeah, granted.
Okay.
But that's we haven't found a better location.
Okay.
That in looking at it and talking about it.
Okay.
So I'm just sort of looking at satellite view to get a sense of what Kate is talking about. So the trucks would back in from Everett. And I see it looks like there's some invasive weed trees growing over where the garbage recycling is. Surely, as Stephen mentioned, they're what we call volunteers that were implanted. And it looks like from above. One of them is a very invasive ailanthus. But you're going to be, are you going to be sort of getting rid of the walls between 90 and 92? And if so, is there no way for the garbage trucks to enter from Route 9? Do they have to enter from Everett?
Well, we haven't had the opportunity to talk to a carting company yet, or whoever would be running it, but I think even so, this really is for the larger trucks. It's still a little tight to maneuver through here, so I can see why they would most of the time want to go ahead and to just back in.
The driveway between 90 and 92 is quite narrow, and there's a turn, and then you're on top of the parking, which you can see the cars parked behind number 92. So to get in there from the Route 9 is actually a problem. I can see that that's the case. The other driveway between the adjacent property to the north and number 90 is a shared driveway, and there's really no turnaround, no real way to get in and out there. I would point out that there is actually garbage pickup on Route 9, and it's probable that these premises, these units, given the frequency of garbage pickup, will not generate anything like the volume and all like that the Ossining Children's Center, which is a completely different use, and so many more individuals in and out, and therefore creating more and different kinds of refuse or recycling, which is also, obviously we want everybody to maximize their recycling. It's possible that some of this could be minimized by Route 9 pickup. And that is in fact what happens at 94. It's all Route 9 pickup. You can see on 94, corner of Everett and South Broadway, that you can't see where the garbage is stored, but it's simply alongside the north side, mostly out of sight, if it's kept down below grade, or up at the corner. And then it's brought out to the street timely, and the barrels are removed, much as in single family neighborhoods with more single family homes. We haven't ruled anything in or out, but we have heard the concern about the Everett driveway at a prior meeting, and remain open-minded about that. This also is a great picture to see where the trees are at the moment, versus where trees could be, because if you look at where all the parking is, there's, and we plant gardens and open up space, there's pretty much a tree more or less anywhere you could put one at the moment, actually. But again, open-minded, happen to be, a fan of gardens myself, and enjoy it. And so I have an appreciation for what you're talking about personally.
So just to go back to what you were talking about, the garbage pickup. So 94 Everett, how many units are in that building?
4. 94 South Highland, just not to correct you, but I just want to be accurate for the record.
Yeah.
So you can see
so
the
there's 4 units. Yes. Okay.
You can see the sidewalk. You can see the sidewalk leading to the Route 9 sidewalk in front. It's simply a couple of standard containers are walked out to the curb. It's basically similar next door, on regular garbage pickup day, just like, folks who, instead of living in a nice apartment, live in a single family residence. Not really much different.
So,
so we don't bring anybody into Everett for garbage, and we don't bring anybody onto the property.
So just so I can understand better, so so the 94 Highland is getting municipal pickup, whereas these other buildings are getting a private contractor. So in terms of, you know, that would be a shift in just, it's not really
I'm
our
not
purview.
sure.
Well,
Yeah, Erica, I apologize. I'm not sure that the Ossipee Children's Center was using a private carter. I
Yeah.
understand that they had.
I believe they
village
were getting the village, if I'm not mistaken, because I remember it would always be the village coming in and out.
That was my understanding.
Okay.
I'd be interested to know if the, Route 9 is Route 9. It has its own issues of traffic flow and safety, including notably the safety of the municipal sanitation workers on that busy road. But I'd be interested in hearing from municipal officials. Perhaps they'd prefer to pick up on 9 and have the tenant, bring their barrel out like I do at my house when the sanitation comes. Again, it's open for discussion.
That will be a planning board decision as to that. Generally with multifamily, their preference lately has been to have private carters. But that will be a planning board, that'll be part of whatever is approved by the planning board. Will deal with the issue of who picks it up and basically where the receptacles are located.
Thank you for laying that out. And,
Sure.
Perhaps the planning board will be influenced by the comments, both by the public and yourselves, as to what the best way to proceed is in this occasion.
I have a question about stormwater. So currently, are there any treatment practices for the runoff from the parking lot?
I'll defer to Mr. Martinez, who's been there and probably has the most knowledge on the call right now.
Yeah. So the quick answer to that is that it appears that there are none. I would like to note that the applicant does not actually own the properties. They are in contract to buy the property. And so one of the things that the planning board is currently looking at, our staff to the planning board is looking at, is trying to determine just what's happening. It appears that the water is essentially running off the roof of both 90 and 92 onto the pavement behind 92 and sort of down the hill. And so that issue appears to have sort of come up most prominently about 15 years ago when the pavement was put in. I'm not sure whether or not the pavement was put in with any sort of a stormwater plan or what the requirements would have been at that time. But it is certainly something that is being looked at right now. And I do think that some recommendations are going to be coming forward from staff. We're expecting to have a meeting with the applicant on Wednesday to kind of have further discussions about it. But it appears the water's just kind of running off the roof and onto the pavement. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. I don't have any more questions. Although I would like to mention that, I would like to request that you consider adding some sort of bike rack or some sort of, in order to, recently in our comments, we're integrating requests for bike racks for multi-unit structures, and considering that this is.
I'm sorry, I have a little emergency, y'all. I'll be right back.
The bike, Erica, I'm not sure. I can't hear you now. Is that me or you? Huh.
How about now?
Now it's
Okay.
good. Thank you.
So we normally request that applicants consider in multifamilies adding some sort of bike rack structure. Ossining is we're trying to make strides in improving our climate footprint, and certainly a 10-unit building would likely have some folks who'd be interested in biking down to the train station. when life returns back to normal.
Yeah.
So it's, relatively inexpensive addition. And not only does it help us, but it also improves the marketability, I would think, of your renters.
And we, earlier today, we updated a site plan which we submitted to Jaime, which we realized it would be a good idea to put a bike rack in. So we're showing that already on the revised plan. That I didn't pull it up tonight. I apologize for not getting that one up to date, but we had a full application here. But yes, bike rack is understandably a good idea. We agree.
Okay, I don't know if anyone else on the board has any comments.
Nope,
No more comments from me.
I'm good.
Okay, so we will gather our comments together in a letter and submit it to the planning board and the zoning board so they know what we talked about tonight. We thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you for
If you
considering.
you could just return us back to the gallery view, that would be
Oh,
appreciated.
yes. Good
Thank you
idea
much.
before I leave, right?
Good night. Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you very much.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
gentlemen.
Thank you both. Since Jaime is away, I don't have the agenda in front of me, so if anyone wants to let me know what else we had on.
We have expanding EAC review, open space inventory, and the approval of the minutes from November and January.
Okay.
By the way, that the 94 South Highland, they did a great job on that renovation. I remember what the house looked like before they came in and did it, and they did it, I think, in a timely manner, and they did a very good job when they were doing all the construction. And what he was talking about with the garbage is what they have the bins on the side, and they just bring it out when it's time for garbage pickup, and it goes along smoothly.
Very cool.
Great.
I just think it's complete crap that they can't afford a couple of trees for the big grassy space, but whatever.
It's just a
It's-
typical
The
pushback.
whole area was a big playground area, so it's
Yeah.
got like jungle gym equipment, a lot of asphalt, a lot of things that are built in. So we'll put stuff in the comments and
Yeah,
see where it
We'll
goes
just
from
put
there.
some Yeah, exactly. No, I know. Yeah, I've seen the whole space because I toured it a couple times before deciding on all the boards. So yeah, it's a huge space and the lawn's gonna be great, but just very flat and very dry.
Well, and I mean, since there aren't any stormwater practices currently, I'm not really sure, what they could integrate into it, whether it would be structural or whether it would be like some sort of bioretention basin. Because it sounds like from what Jaime mentioned, there are some water collection issues there. So then, yeah, they would have, a bioretention basin could double as a nice planting. So they could really kill two birds with one stone in that regard. So, well, we can integrate that suggestion in our comments. I don't know what Opening's regulations are in terms of what our village stormwater regulations are, if we have any. Do we just use the state stormwater regulations by default? Do we require if there is a certain amount of acreage of impervious surface, are we requiring contractors to capture and treat stormwater runoff? That's a question that kind of kicked around in my mind when I'm watching this and while I was watching the presentation.
I would, yeah. See back? No. Okay, we do have, let me just see this here. Chapter 227 of the code is stormwater management and erosion and sediment control. I'm not going to go through the whole thing now because I haven't looked at this in frankly a little while. But It is applicable to all land development and redevelopment activities as defined in the code. And that would include construction activity, including clearing, grading, excavating, soil disturbance, or placement of fill that results in land disturbance of equal to or greater than 2,500 square feet, or activities disturbing less than a quarter acre of total land area that is part of a larger common plan of development or sale. And then it goes through things about impervious cover and everything like that, but it's fairly detailed. Talks about when the SWIP is required. Eric can answer. It says no application for approval of land development or redevelopment activity altering any land that is undeveloped or land on slopes greater than 15%, or if in the opinion of the stormwater management officer certain conditions exist, would require a SWIP. So there is a whole section here as to what it has, when it's required and what the contents are. I'd have to read in greater detail to go through it, but we do have a chapter in our code that deals specifically with it. So,
And it looks like there is going to be more of a quarter acre disturbance, right?
it
When they
looks
remove
like
that,
either that or the 2,500 square feet. So it's going to be, either way, it may well come within that. So
yeah,
could
to
be.
that playscape, and remove that playscape, I would think would trigger that.
Yeah, so that's, in fact, land development or redevelopment activities as defined as I gave you before and meeting certain conditions below shall include water quantity and quality controls. One condition is stormwater runoff from land development discharging the pollutant of concern, stormwater runoff from land development that's 2 or more acres, which is not the case, stormwater runoff from land development that is disturbing less than 2 acres, but is identified by the stormwater management officer as being necessary to include water quantity or quality controls during the course of the project. So there is a whole series of things here. Whether this project specifically applies to that, I don't want to make that call at this point because I just don't know. But we do have a specific code provision that relates to stormwater management and stormwater control. So it may well be applicable. It may be worth, just saying to the planning board that you want to make sure that, this particular property is in compliance with, chapter 227, so that at least it highlights it if in fact it has not already been highlighted by the consulting engineer and the village's engineer.
Okay, good point.
Sorry about that, y'all. My dog just started having seizures. So
Oh, gosh.
they just had to rush the dog to the hospital.
Oh my goodness. Did you say your dog or your daughter?
My dog.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I guess
Oh,
that's
yeah.
better than my daughter, but still
Yeah.
sucks.
Seriously. Oh, I'm
So
so
I
sorry.
don't know what happened. So dog's okay. I mean, he's breathing heavy, but we have a neighbor who's actually a veterinarian, and she asked maybe did the dog get into like the snow melt stuff or so. I don't know.
Yeah.
I sincerely hope not.
I don't know. So I'm sorry. What did I miss though?
We were talking about stormwater runoff and making sure, to mention in our letter to the planning board that they comply with the code. It looks like they might be triggered with the, the disturbance when they remove that rubber playground. It looks like they may trigger a disturbance there, and they might need to, I would like to see them have some stormwater treatment at this site, that even if they're reducing the impervious surface, that's quite a lot of parking lot and cars dripping fuels and oils and things. And I think it would be, in the best interest for the village.
I think, well, so here's the thing. So I want to mention this, and I think that we need to have an internal meeting, I guess, with staff to figure out what the steps, whether it's going to be a full-on SWIP or something else. But the issue is that they're coming forward with a conditional use permit, and so they could just put forward a permit theoretically that asks for conditional use and propose 0 site changes where they didn't touch anything that happened. And, we need to discuss internally whether they can be required to do anything or not. But one of the reasons they're removing the rubberized surface is because staff myself in particular, said that you have way too much impervious surface and that's going to be a burden long run. So that's in response to the runoff problems that they have right now. It appears likely that there's going to be a need for further stormwater stuff to be done, perhaps like, the dry well or something being put in the parking lot, but we don't know what the engineers are going to say. I mean, we're certainly looking at it. I don't know from a technical standpoint of a SWIP. I really would have to talk to Stuart and our own land use council and engineering on the details of that. But there's certainly, I think that in order for their project to move forward, they're going to have to address the runoff problem, which was created when the parking lot was put in. It appears, and all of the surface was put in. It doesn't look like any of it was put in through a formal process. So.
Okay.
So it's kind of trying to correct an old mistake in a new project. So, Stuart, you look like you wanted to add some commentary.
No, I actually discussed it while you were out for a second in terms of what we're doing there. But I think it's important to just see if that's needed. And just remind me, honey, because I know you said it. The applicant technically doesn't own it yet. So
no.
Is their purchase essentially contingent upon getting the approvals? For
it is, yeah.
Okay.
It is. So if they don't get approvals, right, then they don't buy it, then nothing will change. Which is not any reason to not follow the rules, but it just makes it much more challenging to sort of impose needed stormwater controls on the existing owner. So, we want to come up with a solution that's going to get it fixed. And I don't personally believe that it's remaining in the hands of the OCC will yield that outcome.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Jaime, what's the hydrology here? What's the flow? Are they both just sort of flowing west, or does one flow into the?
No, so everything is flowing southwest. So the properties that are on the corner, on the southwest corner, the one sort of like directly east of that driveway, they have both expressed that in large rain events that they get a lot of flooding in the basement. And Kate, if you live there, I'm sure you can attest to that.
Yes.
They said that it basically started 15 years ago when it used to be a gravel lot. There was no issue. And then after it got paved, it became an issue. The neighbor, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So when it rains, it goes from that big parking lot, which I'm happy to see, because it used to have a lot of cars that would just sit there and idle. But when it would rain, it would just be this massive, just like puddle that would just keep flowing, and it would go into the parking lot of Nora Milton Williams, and then Tamer, and in that parking lot in there, it would just be this river that would come through, and sometimes it would collect at the bottom of the driveways, and it would kind of feed into this.
Would it be possible, Jaime, to pull up the map so we could talk about what the flow is?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much. Because if they do end up, constructing a stormwater practice, whether it's above ground, or underground, we'd want to suggest that they place it in the area where they're capturing the most runoff. And so.
So they don't have here on the plans the elevations, sort of the contours that show where the water flows. But I can tell you that the water basically flows, generally this way, and there's a low point here, and then there's another low point here, and so it's essentially falling on these two properties. There's an additional problem that was created by the rubberized surface here that created runoff behind the property on the Tamer Abamolo.
Abamolo.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
that's
they've also
Everett.
Yeah, so they've also expressed concern with that.
Yeah, and when it rains, so one of the things that happens is they would have to go into the basement every time there was a large rain event or significant amount of meltwater that would come through during the late winters and in the early spring, and it would just become this constant water coming out. And there were a couple of repaint jobs and I think one repaving at some point, but the water would end up collecting at the end of the driveway. Sometimes it would mess up the quality of the driveway after a while.
Yeah,
The constant,
so you can see
Yeah.
here at 92 does not have any gutters or leaders at all. 90 does have gutters and leaders, but those leaders lead directly to the parking lot. So they basically channel all the water from this very large roof down into the parking lot. And then from that parking lot, it sort of goes this way and then down here to the pavement, to the sidewalk. Now, if this was being done, you know, if it was a vacant lot and somebody's coming and trying to build something, you'd say, okay, well, you got to tie into, you know, your dry well systems on site. You have to, you know, tie into any overflow would have to go into the stormwater system in the street. This is a rehab. So because it's an internal rehab, you know, obviously the financial sort of implications of all this are a little bit different. And there's an existing thing that's here that's been here for 15 years, right? And it just creates a whole new set of headaches with trying to fix this problem. So, I'm not an engineer, and I'll get in trouble if I try to play one. So, but I think that the best case scenario is finding a way to keep as much of the runoff on site as possible. Because we did look at what if they had tied into a catch basin for the property? There's one catch basin that's up here, up the hill. So it's not really feasible to do that. And then there's another catch basin which is very far away. So it would be hard to tie into any catch basin there, which means that they would have to tie in.
Is it illegal to tie into catch basins? I thought that was illegal.
That's a Stuart question.
Yeah.
Stuart will let you know. I don't know. I think that happens to be true, though. I do not believe you can tie in directly to the catch basin.
I don't think you can do that anymore. I don't think you can do that.
Yeah.
Imagine if everybody
So
did that.
I don't have any. That wouldn't have been my recommendation, anyways. I mean, I think that creating some dry wells here on the site would be the best case scenario. I did ask the engineer how far they needed to be from the property line. They said about 15 feet. So they could theoretically put one here that's sort of like under the pavement, kind of almost to that out exit lane, and sort of
That
have
driveway is very tricky.
Yeah, have a trench drain or something right here that leads back to that. So there's some options.
Driveway because the way that it goes up against the properties in that area, it's going to make it really, really tricky to put something in there. Just to make sure that it's conforming to everything that it has to meet. And it's on a block that's sloping downward.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I don't play the engineers, because I'm a planner, And,
yeah,
right.
it kind
I'm out
of
of my element, but-
Tom is a stormwater guy. It's too bad Tom's not here. Tom's a stormwater guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sure, listen, the stormwater capture and treatment world is a big, broad, wide one, and I'm sure there's a solution out there. So I think Jaime's right. Let's not wear our, the hats we don't deserve and pretend we don't know. But I think it is something that we should certainly suggest in the letter to the planning board and the zoning court.
Yeah. I mean, look, the community's already come out about it. There's the neighbor on the north side actually came out and he had different questions. He was like, oh, how do we get people to stop driving back here? And I was like, well, they own the parking, they own the driveway, and they own the spaces. So I don't know what I can do about that. But but the ones that these people are, they're suffering. So I think they need some help. And certainly the staff has taken a very strong focus at trying to figure out what the problem is and what the solution realistically could be.
In that shared driveway, that's in, I guess that would be 88, the neighbor
Mhm.
you just mentioned, 88. What is that structure at the back end of that parking lot there? Is that a garage?
Yeah, that structure is a garage. That garage belongs to 88. It's like
Oh,
an
I
old
see.
wooden garage. Yeah, it's not. It doesn't belong to these.
So 90 owns the parking lot, but not the garage.
Well, no, there's a huge parking lot. 90 owns these 3 spaces. There's another parking lot here and here.
Oh, I see.
And then this pavement that you see back here, it's actually like, it appears to be a community garden right now, or something
Okay.
like a community garden. It's got planter boxes. I guess it's sitting on pavement. I'm not sure about that, but
Oh.
um,
Yeah.
That was a garden that the Ossining Children's Center had as a way of like providing education for the students.
Okay.
They'd go out and they'd plant tomatoes and potatoes and stuff like that.
yeah, I mean, you can see over the years they just threw pavement on everything. They just
Yeah.
covered every little bit of the surface, which, you know, this applicant is proposing to change a lot of that. So
Yeah. That's good. That's good. Okay. Oh, I see. There's a bike rack on this plan. That was not on that plan. I think. we
yeah,
saw earlier.
I mean, once it was determined that they were going to come to the EAC, I said, hey, fellas, you better put a bike rack on there, because they're going to tell you to put a bike rack on. So they did,
Okay.
and it's good.
Yeah, that's good. So moving on on our agenda, I think there was was there some discussion of the open space inventory? Is there movement on that?
On mute, sorry. So Jaime and I haven't had a chance to meet yet. It's just been a crazy month this past January, but I did attend the natural resource inventory. So I'm putting together stuff in collaboration with that to add to the open space project. The DEC is doing an open space inventory and plan web seminar on February 23rd that I will be attending. So Jaime, would you be able to meet February 25th perhaps, or sometime within that week? And then I can go over with you everything that I've collected between now and then. And if anybody wants to join in on the meeting, please feel free whenever it is.
The 25th is totally free except for in the evening, and that week, yeah, it's like so far in advance I don't have anything going on, so, except for my standing meetings. I'm good. So just
Okay.
send me a time that works for you, and
Okay.
I'm pretty much free.
I will work out a schedule. It's all about homeschooling and making sure that's taken care of. But yeah, we'll work it out for the 25th.
Is anyone on this committee part of the comprehensive plan?
No, but I have been sitting in on almost every meeting that they have had, probably with the exception of the last meeting. So I'm familiar with what's going on. Speaking of that, the DPW site is going to come up. So in relation to the comp plan as well, that's been going back and forth. But no, I have been sitting in on it. I don't know what's going on, where they are with it at this point, but I know that they did drafts for most of the chapters, if not almost all, if I'm not mistaken.
The plan has been sent to the Board of Trustees. And it is now with the board. And I think there's actually going to be a discussion. Jaime, it's this Wednesday, correct? I believe, at the work session.
Correct.
And we've also recently gotten a draft of the draft generic environmental impact statement. which will be formally accepted by the board on the 17th of February, and that starts the sort of 90-day review clock with regard to that document. So those two are there. But the plan, if you can access it off the village's website. The steering committee did approve a resolution, basically sending the plan over to the Board of Trustees.
So when we did have the comp plan meetings, back when the subcommittees were giving feedback, things that came up repeatedly were the discussions of walking space or development at the waterfront, walking path and how we can connect properties, how we can actually open the space up. And with the DPW site, they're proposing to put in a walking path to extend the Sing Sing Kill Greenway. So this is something that we can discuss as far as like what kind of feedback we can give to the developers of the site. I don't know if they definitely are going with William Bolter, but they did propose a building that would take care of issues with the Greenway. They would extend it and turn it into a public park, essentially, or a public space as part of the development plan.
Yeah, so there are a few aspects that are still kind of being worked out, the details. One that is, I think that is certainly, if this proposal did move forward, will be a guaranteed part of it, is the extension of the Sing Sing Kill. There's most likely going to be some, public park space that is incorporated in as a part of that, and there's most likely going to be some sort of agreement that the developer will continue to take responsibility for maintaining that portion of the park in perpetuity. Not all of it, but part of it at least, especially considering it's kind of, going to be their front yard. That being said, I think this is a good time to provide comments. The EAC does have a formal role to play in this process, as the project is in the 50-foot buffer from the Sing Sing Kill, thereby making it a wetlands ordinance project that will be referred to you as a matter of course. Because it is such a complex project, a lot of the details are being worked out right now. So I think this is a really good time for the members to get involved in providing some advice with the understanding that it will come back to you at some point.
The meetings I did sit in on, the developers, from what I have seen, are very open to making it lead goals, that they want to do things that will be, environmentally friendly. They want to cooperate and, put green roof, solar panels, try to do things that will be beneficial in working with the village to do that. So I think this is something that we can absolutely, help, give feedback and help provide guidance.
I saw that the environmental notice bulletin regarding the cleanup and
Yep.
remediation of that old gas manufacturing plant. Geez Louise, what a nightmare.
That's a good way to describe it.
Yeah.
It's the document is 2,000 pages.
Yeah, I downloaded it and said, my God, what have I just done?
I
But
just read the fact sheet.
I have the fact sheet. I also have the alternatives that the alternatives were 140 pages. We're going to have a call on that probably in a couple of days in terms of what that all means. But there's a lot of work that has to be done. The important thing to remember in terms of that particular work is that what Con Ed is going to want to do the least amount that they have to do. And they are specifically looking to remove the coal tar, which is way underground. So above that, there's different proposals, one of which is to essentially dig down, I think it's 34 or 40 feet, the entire thing, and just do it all out. That's like an $8 million alternative. The other one is what they call in situ solidification, where they basically inject Portland cement and solidify what's underneath there. One of the difficulties with that is that you then have to figure out where you're going to put the foundation of your building. Because if you put your foundation there, you essentially destroy what's called the ISS. So they're working that. You could do nothing, which is not the case, because if we want this to be what's called restricted residential for purposes of the DEC, you have to be at a certain standard. So there's going to be discussions between the DEC, Con Ed, obviously the village, and Wilder Bolter. There will be something that's called an environmental easement with regard to the area. What we're talking about is something, just so you know, where the DPW where the building by Bolter is proposed, on the other side of Central Avenue is still actually a Con Ed facility there. That's also where they would have to do work, but it's these two large lots, one of which they refer to as OU1 meaning operating unit. They've been doing testing on these areas for over 10 years. They've been doing different tests. There would be required at the location where the Bolter project is to have soil and air testing probably for at least the next 30 years in terms of what goes on there. And they have tested some of the nearby homes and found nothing above the levels that would require any additional testing at those locations. So we are primarily looking, where this is, but that is something we did get a letter, last week from Con Ed, essentially saying, this is where we are. This is starting out, but there's a lot to do. As Bill Bolter has said, having a plan and a project will sort of goose the people to get this to move a bit, because otherwise you're in the queue with everybody else. I will say this, while we knew that this was a site that was subject to a consent order with the state, we were somewhat taken aback, at least I was, Jaime, I don't know if you were, to suddenly see this fact sheet come across and say, by the way, this is Ossining, hello. We didn't know that. And if you click on the fact sheet, you get all the documents going all the way back. But we were unaware that this had actually come out, that, Arcadis's report was dated December. But the alternatives report, if you get a chance to just look at that, is actually very interesting reading, because it gives the history of the site. It goes into, what the various proposals are, what the different alternatives are, and, what they're looking to do. But it's important to remember, Con Ed's going to try to do the least they have to, because even the alternative that is proposed by the Con Ed engineer would cost, I think, about $3.5 million in present day dollars. So that's something that will be refined further. As I said, there'll be more discussions with the DEC. Wilder Bolter is aware of this, and I expect we're going to have a call shortly with them to see basically next steps. But it is always fun to read the environmental notice bulletin and suddenly see Ossining going, oh, well, yeah. I didn't know that.
Is this on the DPW site, the website, or is this available from somewhere else?
I will send you the fact sheet. How's that?
Wonderful. I love it.
And then you can go to town.
Yeah, we have not put it on the DPW side. I mean, I suppose we could, but I think it probably would make it a little more confusing, because it's not being initiated by the village or.
Yeah, in fact, this is really, it's Con Ed at the required by the state.
Yeah.
Because.
Okay, so the backstory is the state is requiring Con Ed to do this, but Con Ed's not going to sell or develop this lot, right? It will still be.
They don't own it now.
They don't own it. They do own, excuse me. They own the portion on the other side of Central Avenue. Okay, so the lot with what we call the DPW site, that is village owned. But if you cross Central Avenue, there is a Con Ed building there. Both of them make up operating unit 1, but
Okay.
Con Ed can only specifically they have to deal with everything, but they only own the one. So the easement is in essence going to have to be given by the village because the village is the owner of the DPW site.
So the site of the former gas manufacturing plant that's on the south side of the stream is owned by the village.
Yes, and in fact, Erica, at the last meeting that we had, or the last presentation, and I can send it to you, Dana White actually had a photo from, I think, the 30s, which shows the entire plant on that site, the tanks, the everything, and it's something to look at because now if you look, what you now see are a few retaining walls. But back then it was a full site. And I'm happy. I'll send it all to you because it's an interesting picture to see what that looked like before Con Ed took, because the plant itself stopped production in there you go. You can see that's where you can see Central Avenue. And then what you have basically to the right of that is all the plant.
Oh my God. Holy moly.
Where the cursor is where you had Jaime had the cursor before. That is actually the plant that's, there now. But everything else there, the tanks and everything, that has all since been taken down, but it is what is underneath that is the problem.
You're right. 30 feet down.
Yeah, I mean, you can see the nice looking retaining wall here too. And that retaining wall is still there, sort of, but it doesn't look that nice anymore.
No, at least 34 feet, Erica.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really familiar with this whole injection process. I felt I was a little bit over my head with that documentation, and there's a lot of, you almost need like a chemist to help you navigate the pages and pages worth of
Right.
testing that they did. But in terms of the health of the river, I would be wary of hardening off a shoreline because it would definitely affect the ecosystem of the stream, or I mean,
Well,
it already sounds like a nightmare.
This is why this is important because, and Erica, you remember from the fact sheet, you have until the 26th of February to provide comments to the DEC.
2,000 pages. You have
Well,
3.
I'm not asking you to read 2,000 pages because most of that is just the test results. So don't do that.
Right.
But if you look at the alternatives, which is one of the other recent document that has an executive summary, which is actually not yeah, you need some sort of understanding, but it's not terrible. I point this out because again, February 26th, they give the person who you can contact at the DEC. So what I would suggest, I will send to everyone on the EAC the fact sheet. On the fact sheet to the left side are links to the documents for this particular project, both the most recent and the older ones, the archived ones. I'd suggest you look at the most recent stuff, and it may be worthwhile to just sort of have an informal Zoom, before the 26th of February to see if there is anything that as the EAC, you want to write to the DEC with regard to, what's contained in that fact sheet and what is, really the next step. There will be, and there is required when you get to the brownfield stage, which is what this would be, is what's called citizen participation. That's mandatory by the DEC. It requires a full citizen participation plan, which is obviously notifying the citizenry, getting them involved, and that gets dealt with. But at this early stage, we're not at that plan yet. But what we are at a stage where there can be comments made by any interested individuals or parties. So my suggestion is I'll send you all the fact sheet, look at it, see what, if you have any questions, and then, we can chat again, I think is probably the best thing. As I said, when you go to that fact sheet, what I can do is I'll send you the fact sheet as well as the the alternatives thing, which is not, it's far shorter than the other one. The first one, as Erica said, was over, I think, 2,400 pages, which was somewhat amazing. So when you look at that, I think it'll give you probably a better idea of what to look at. And then you can start going through it. And then, as I said, we can have another chat to see if there's something that you want to, again, send to the EAC. But this photo is very telling as to what that area looked like down there. And it's interesting because we had someone on our call when we had this, the last meeting. This was a traditionally black area of Ossining. It's not surprising that many of the low-income areas, it's not just Ossining, what do they put there? Environmentally hazardous places.
Right.
And you're looking at one right now. So
Yeah.
that's, so, Ossining is unfortunately not different than a lot of other places that do that. Just ask the people
Right.
who live down in Louisiana near, where the drilling
Right.
goes on. So
Right.
what I'd suggest is I'll send this all to you folks. Look at it. As I said, look at the executive summary, look at the alternatives just to the extent. I don't know much about the in situ solidification other than what they say. But I think, questions, some of the ones, Erica, you just brought up are fair to ask. Let the DEC look at that, because they may think their view may be to say to Con Ed, you know what, you got to do a more, you got to do more, essentially. And
Yeah.
that's what I think the important thing is, because you do have, the kill runs right through there. So,
Right.
so that's the important thing.
If you
Filling
need
right
me to
into
send any of the current pictures, I can send you the pictures I took when we did the DPW site tour.
Okay.
So we have until the 25th to write a letter. So after Stuart,
Hey, could you
after
send
we-
me those? Actually,
I think I did. I think I sent it to everyone. I put it in a document, but I can resend it.
'Cause
I
we
can
have
do
a
that later.
presentation about greening the waterfront on Saturday, and it would be useful to have some of those.
So then
in that
I will
presentation.
send them out. If I can't get it tonight, I will get it to you tomorrow.
Thank you, Kate.
Thanks.
Right, Erica, we have till Friday, the 26th of February.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, wouldn't it be nice if Water Street was like, a nice bridge over a beautiful kill that flowed into the river.
And these are things that have come up in the comp plan, that if it can be something that can be connected, that would help actually put that in. It would give the incentive to have the rest of that walkway kind of, actually done.
Yeah.
As I said, I'll send this all to you folks, so you'll have it.
So, if I would suggest that we just, in lieu of a meeting, we have an email exchange. That always works better for me,
Sure.
time-wise. And we could, let's pull together some, bulleted thoughts about the plan that DEC has proposed. If anyone else has thoughts about, after they've done a little bit of reading. And I do think, even if our comments aren't necessarily consequential or substantive, it is important for us to insert ourselves in the process, so we know that DEC has a partner here, and that we are also paying attention. And, I think Stuart raises a fair point that it is kind of curious that there's been all this extensive reporting and testing, and we're just finding out about it now. So we sort of would like to kindly remind them that we're here. And I think that would be useful to getting the best result for this remediation project. I mean, I would love to see it all scooped out and removed. But we'll see what we could do to,
Yeah, I mean, I think the developer has, we have a February 25th. I think we're going to talk more about specifically the brownfield matters, but I do believe the developer's proposal includes the removal of a significant amount of topsoil, more than what is being called for, I think, right now in the recommendation from Con Ed.
I mean,
Like a lot more.
Yeah, it's
So.
terrible, and it goes so far down.
Yes, unfortunately it does. And this was a very common method used by Con Ed. So that's why, they have standards what they do now for these I think it's manufactured gas processing plants, which creates.
Yes.
the coal tar.
Oh, so it was Con Ed operated that plant.
Well,
That's
actually, when it was first opened, Con Ed did not actually become the owner probably until the very early part of the 20th century. But the plant itself was operating since like the 1850s.
Right.
I think first was the Sing Sing Electric Company or something, and then it kept getting bigger and bigger. But ultimately, it became Con Ed. But it's Con Ed that decommissioned it and ultimately removed everything. But it was was started by one company. They all ultimately merged themselves into Con Ed, if you want to say it that way. But Con Ed itself did not become the formal owner until the early part of the 20th century.
Okay. But the property now is owned by the village.
The village owns the DPW site. The site that's on the north side of Central Avenue and Water Street, that's owned by Con Ed. So what used to be the quote unquote DPW site, that's village owned. Yes, where they proposed to construct this building, that's village owned.
But the site where they're proposing the remediation, which is basically on the south side of the kill.
It's at both locations. It's both at both parcels, the DPW and the Con Ed on the north side of Central. Both are considered for purposes of the report OU1 or Operating Unit 1. So there would be work done at both, but the in situ work that I mentioned is only proposed for the DPW site because that's where they are finding the coal tar.
So where they would inject the hardened cement to encapsulate the contaminants, that's actually on village property.
That's correct.
Well, good thing we're not putting that bill.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But you're
It's
right.
a complicated it's a complicated financial stack. I would, yeah.
You are right.
That's quite a history. That's quite a history there. It's
Yes,
quite an
indeed.
unfortunate history. Okay. So I will pull together just to kind of pull things to round up the night. I will pull together the comments that we discussed with the applicant tonight in a bullet form. And circle it to the group, and then I'll pull together a letter for the planning board and the zoning board once everybody's if anybody wants to provide me comments in short order after I've circulated that, that'd be great, and then we can provide that to the planning board and the zoning board, and then. As Stuart mentioned, we do need to get comments to the DEC regarding this other project we just most recently discussed by the 25th. So if folks want to have a look at that and circulate their comments and thoughts by, let's say, is 10 days from now doable for everybody? No, I would like to say a week. But if that's not doable, 10 days would work too. And then we could just kind of raise our hand and insert ourselves into the process a little bit with DEC. Even if we don't have a heck of a lot to say, I think it's important that we make ourselves known.
That's fine.
I can do 10 days.
And I'll get it all out to you tomorrow.
Okay. Okay. I don't have the minutes in front of me from the previous meeting, but I vote to approve them. And I know I kind of had a backlog with poor Jamie Kane. And I did finally get her some signed minutes from going back a while. So
No
yeah,
problem.
let's not forget to address that, and so we don't hold anyone up. Does anybody have any objections to approving those minutes?
Nope.
I approve.
Okay,
And folks, last thing before you finish tonight, I had Jamie Kane send you this booklet from the state on conservation councils and advisory boards. Let's talk about it next time.
Okay.
Because you are a council, you're not a conservation board, which actually is a little bit more authority. And that dovetails into the open space stuff that we've been talking about. So if you look at this in particular at the end, if you look at the sections of the code where it talks about the enabling legislation, it's sections 239X and 239Y. You already fall under 239X. It's 239Y, which is designating the council as a conservation board, is something you might just want to look at because it deals specifically with open space and your role with regard to that. So that's something we can talk about next month.
Wonderful. I'll look at that as well.
Perfect.
okay, thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you all. Have a good one. Take care.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night,
Yes.
everyone.
Night.